Hi, 2001 was definitely interesting and a lot of amazing games came out for Windows. So let's check the next few of them out. Guilty Gear X is the first ever high-resolution versus fighting game and a follow-up to the first Guilty Gear. It features 16 unique characters, tons upon tons of explosive and flashy special attacks and a variety of defensive moves. What's more, it carried from the previous game a so-called tension gauge, which builds up as you're approaching the enemy or attacking, and decreases if you're moving away from your opponent or doing nothing for a while. It is used for special overdrive attacks when it's half filled, which is considerably more damaging than the regular ones. And when it's full, it enables an attempt at an instant kill move, which can down the opponent instantly regardless of his health level. If it fails though, the tension gauge will not build up anymore until the end of that round, so it's a kind of a risk-reward type of a mechanic. What Guilty Gear X is best known for though are its incredible combos, which while perhaps not the easiest to pull off and require a player well versed with the game, when utilized properly can be truly devastating to both opponent's HP bar and his/her ego. Also rather impressive to watch. The game takes place in the late 22nd century and depicts events taking place long after the first human-gear war, with gears being these artificial beings created at the beginning of that century. You know, your typical Terminator scenario but with less guns and more kicking and punching. The gears were originally made with no will of their own and strictly to obey and serve humans, but one of them was special and infected the others with his disease of free will, causing them to rebel against their creators. You could say that he was a robo-Jesus. Years have passed since the quote-unquote war, however, and nothing suggested that the history will repeat itself and that the new conflict will reignite. Well, at least until a new gear with its own will was unexpectedly discovered. Gear named Dizzy. Yes, like that egg from 1980s arcade adventure games on small 8-bit machines. So to capture him, a new tournament is organized with a grand prize of $500,000. I know, it all sounds really silly, but such is the story of this game, and this is where it all begins. If you like versus fighters, chances are you're gonna love Guilty Gear X, but if you don't, then carry on watching the video, all the other games are of a different genre. Black and White is a god game made by the industry legend and one of the pioneers of the genre, Peter Molyneux. It is often considered as the spiritual successor to his earlier populous games, even if it's considerably different to those titles. In Black and White, you take a role of a deity that leads its people and protects them from its evil counterpart, Nemesis. A very fitting name, I must add. While on the surface the game is a tale of all this time conflict between good and evil, you are not really assigned that good role by default, and it's up to you to work to be considered such. Or not, because you know, it's all up to you and you may elect to be a dick. Anyway, you are there to lead your people, but you're also entirely invisible to them, and your interactions with them are mainly through your deeds, and even more so through your avatar creature, which you choose at the game's start. They differ in their stats and are proficient at different things. There's quite a few of them too, and they are huge, mostly based on real animals giants. Yeah, if you wonder, the answer is yes. There is a cow between them too, and it's glorious. They always start small, well, relatively small to what they will become, but still much bigger than all the folks around them. You can teach them many different things, both good and bad, which may prove helpful to your devotees or not. So you can teach them to collect resources and bring to the village, to fight opposing creatures, to perform miracles, or, well, eat villagers, because why the hell not? You are a god after all. There are many different things that they can learn, but I'll let you figure it all out by yourself. And how your creature behaves will reflect on your character as a deity. Teaching is performed using a reinforcement learning system with strokes and slaps used to either approve or discourage a particular behavior. The base goal of each level is to take control of every village on the island by making all of the villagers recognize you as a deity and turn into believing in you. You can do it by helping them in their day-to-day tasks, by artifact gifts, by protecting them, or like all evil gods do, with fear. The choice of how to approach a task at hand is yours really, but the outcome for the winning must be the same. Black and White is a way too big of a game to give it justice here in such a short segment, but it was well known for its excellent AI, the avatar being able to learn and use that knowledge on its own, and a rather slow gameplay loop. Fun gameplay loop, mind you, but snail-paced. All fans of god games or unique and unusual RTSs, which Black and White in part is too, will definitely enjoy it. Others, well, they should probably give it a chance to see what they think about it, as it's unlike most other games and worth checking out. The simplest way of describing Age of Sail 2 would be to say that it's Age of Sail 1, but better. That, however, would assume your prior knowledge of the earlier game, and it's not a given, since it covered a very specific time period and represented a rather niche genre. Age of Sail 2 is set between 1775 and 1820, so in the so-called Age of Fighting Sail, and it's a tactical naval combat strategy. It comes with 6 campaigns set in Napoleonic and Revolutionary Wars times and themes, and with over 100 individual historic missions. There are 1200 real-for-the-time ships from 11 nations in the game, and overall it is considered as a title rooted in history and quite realistic. Age of Sail 2 uses an active pause system for its combat, meaning you can pause the game at any time to issue commands to one or many of the ships that you control. They are rather indirect and focus on ship positioning and formation, choice of ammo for the encounters, and crew division, splitting them between being assigned to cannons or repairs, for instance. The main difference between the second and first game was introduction of a full 3D engine with free rotation and land masses. And if you think that's not much, you're right, it does feel lacking, especially that the AI was something that the game suffered from, as it's been considered by many reviewers basically from day one as broken, as it often did just the most stupid things you could imagine in a particular scenario, like picking just one ship in your group and going straight for it, completely ignoring others shooting at it from all sides, just pushing at it kamikaze style. Or moving most if not all of its men to repairs, even after sustaining a very minor damage from a singular cannon hit. These are just a few examples, and the AI will surprise you more than once, and rarely in a positive way. That said, from what I've heard, as I sadly never had a chance to sample it myself, multiplayer in Age of Sail 2 is supposedly rather fun. So if any of the themes and mechanics that the game touches sound like something you'd like to check out, and you have someone to play it with online, then you may have a lot of fun. Alone, in single player, it's not bad either, but you have to be ready to forgive a lot, as bugs and dodgy AI will be more than prominent throughout any and all missions that you'll play. Summoner is a Western 3D action role-playing game, very similar to popular at the time JRPGs. So it is heavily focused on the story, features linear plot with rather forgettable side missions and random enemy encounters, which for the players used to Western games like Fallout or Baldur's Gate may seem simplistic and lazy, but it's just the style that JRPGs are made in. And if you adjust your expectations, you may have a lot of fun with the Summoner. You play as Joseph, a young fellow living in a village of Siran. You are also marked as a summoner from birth and own a magical ring containing the power to summon demons. It was given to you by a mysterious stranger some time before. When your village is unexpectedly attacked and overwhelmed, in a last-ditch effort to save it, you use the ring. Sadly, with no experience to back up your gift, you quickly lose control of the summoned demon, who devastates the village as a result. So, leaving the rings behind, you vow to never use the ring again and settle in a far-off quiet town where you aim to lead a peaceful life. That is until Emperor Marot's soldiers raid it, seeking for a boy with a mark of a summoner. So, yeah, you. From that point onward, it becomes clear that you must once more leave, form a party of brave and just adventurers, or whomever decides to join you, and find a way to stop the evil Emperor. The companions will join your party as the plot dictates, and you'll have very little control over it. And while you can't move them in combat either, only having direct control of your character, you can at least issue some basic commands to them, picking between ranged or melee combat, spellcasting and the likes. You don't have to though, and can focus on active controlling of your character only, leaving them to their actually pretty decent AI. It's perhaps not the best you've seen, but also not something that should hamper your progress. For more demanding encounters, however, I would still advise keeping at least one hand on the steering wheel. The enemy AI is sadly on the opposite side of that imaginary artificial intelligence stick and leaves a lot to be desired. They will most often charge at you and fight you to the death, meaning that they won't stop when they're clearly losing or to call for the reinforcements. Boss fights are excellent though, challenging, well thought out and staged, and overall fun to work out. Summoner's presentation is amazing for the time, with beautiful backdrops, interesting locations, excellent character models, smooth animations and explosive effects, and all that is encompassed with a very decent sound design. If you enjoy role-playing games, especially JRPGs, then despite Summoner being entirely Western-made, it's a very involving adventure in a breathtaking presentation worth checking out. Rally Championship Xtreme is an unofficial 2001's WRC rally racing game. It features 28 real rally cars and has many tracks in Britain, Arctic, USA and many others, covering all possible road surfaces from snow through gravel to sand and anything in between. There are 5 game modes available, so Championship, Quick Game, Arcade, Challenge and Multiplayer, and it's that first that is the main part of the game, letting you play out entire racing season. Prior to each race you can set up your car for the challenges ahead, keeping in mind time limitations of set choices, as each has a corresponding time cost assigned to it. Same goes for the repairs, so keeping your car in tip-top form is advisable, as it leaves you with the biggest time budget for it all. The damage model is rather well done, though at times it feels like the cars are made out of paper, as ending a race with a set of rather serious faults and damages is nothing unusual, regardless how much you try to keep the car in one piece. The controls are fine, as in they work, but they feel like there's a slight input delay. It's a bit difficult to gauge just by watching the video, but if you play it, you should be able to notice. It's not terrible or game-breaking in any way though, like it can be in many other games, but it's something you'll need to get used to and adjust, which is less than optimal. But when you do eventually, the racing itself is rather fun if you're into the sport, that is. And while perhaps Rally Championship Xtreme is not on the same quality level as the competing games like Colin McRae rarely are for instance, it's still good enough for you to sink in some hours, have fun and finish a few seasons. Presentation is, or rather was, easily Rally Championship Xtreme's strongest suit if you had a strong enough system back then to have all the pixels rolling and sounds buzzing at the best possible fidelity, and it was as close to the real thing as the 2001 tech allowed for. Would I recommend seeking it out today and adding to your collection? It depends. If you have any other good rally games from the time, then no, it's one to skip, but if you own none and manage to find it somewhere for the right price, then yeah, by all means, get it. Il-2 Sturmovik is a flight combat simulation that takes place during Second World War and focuses on often ignored by the games genre Eastern Front of the European theater, especially conflict between German and Soviet sides. You can fly for both, or either I should say really, and they have their own rather well put together, detailed and very realistic campaigns. Realism in fact is a single word that could best describe the entire game of Il-2. Everything about it is so true to life that at the time it might have been the most realistic simulation ever made. I mean, you'll fly in a physically accurate environment with all the engine stalls, blackouts and the like that you expect to happen. You'll get shot in a fuel canister and have it leaking, your engines may catch fire if shot, you can lose flight controls or even get blown up to bits. Not to get overly negative here though, all that and more can happen to your enemies too, so it's an even ground. Or air, even air, whatever. The general consensus online is that it's incredibly realistic and I refuse to question it. Especially that I gotta come clean here, I've not played it myself, so all that I told you about it is 100% based on the research I've done, without any personal experiences in the mix. Anyway, when you're done with the campaigns, Il-2 serves a whole plethora of single missions and even a mission builder, which allows you to craft your own challenges. So the formula for near-endless longevity is definitely here, and if you add to it numerous real-life locations you'll fly over, it's a title not to miss if you're a fan of the genre. Wizardry 8 is the surprise 8th entry in the long-running series of first-person RPGs and a direct sequel to the previous game, Crusaders of the Dark Savant. It released 9 years after its direct predecessor and as such, while not being the best looking game of the time, still offered considerably higher fidelity presentation than the last entry. Other than that, mostly everything is very similar to earlier titles. So you have 11 races to choose from when creating your party of up to 6 adventurers, all the same classes as before, plus an entirely new one of Gadgeteer. The skills can be improved upon level ups and the gameplay is virtually identical. So you complete quests, take part in numerous turn-based combat encounters and move around 3D environment. This time, however, it's really 3D. Very simple 3D perhaps, but 3D nonetheless. You can naturally create a new party at start or import one from Crusaders of the Dark Savant, and this choice alone presents 5 different start-off points for your adventure based on the choices in the former installment. There are 3 game endings too, so a certain degree of replayability is definitely present in the game. What's more, Wizardry 8 reaches even deeper into earlier game's lore, and some of the subplots in it may even be based on your choices made in Wizardry 6, provided you kept the same party. They're not entirely game-changing, but are a nice, fun-adding flavors. For instance, depending if you chose to ally with or just follow Cyborg Alitidis in the 6th game, he may or may not be attacked and killed by the Dark Savant in the 8th. Like I said, fun. The story, while a bit complicated and reaching far and wide to earlier games, is basically a tale of your group of adventurers seeking godhood. Godhood which requires you to find 3 mythical artifacts, so a key to life, key to knowledge and key to change, and then bring them to the so-called Ascension Peak. So to simplify, you're like a sci-fi/medieval keymaster from Ghostbusters 2, and all you need is a Gozer. Jokes aside, Wizardry 8 is excellent, and if you like classic party-based first-person RPGs, you'll love it. I could say that Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction was just an expansion pack to base Diablo 2, but that would be really doing it a disservice. Cause in my eyes Diablo 2 became what it is considered to be now, so an amazing hack-and-slash classic after it received its Lord of Destruction expansion. Before it was a great concept, fun game, but not a complete product. It was a 0.9 release that the Lord of Destruction finally brought to the 1.0 level. It completed the package, making it feel like an amazing, fun and timeless title. Which in all fairness, it was. It brings Baal into the mix, placing him as the last and most important boss of the entire game, and also one that's sitting at the very end of the new and freshly added 5th act. It comes with a new area with 6 quests to complete and dozens upon dozens of new and powerful enemies. It also rewrites the base game mechanics quite considerably. There are 2 new classes added of female assassin and male druid, both very interesting and feeling entirely different to what was already in the game. It allowed companions to stay with the player character throughout the entire game and not only be used occasionally when quests called for it. They now level up too, can be geared to increase their stats, and if they die, you can resurrect them. You know, in case you got used to that wonky sword-wielding sidekick of yours and would like him to carry on tanking the enemy hits like a boss. Naturally, hundreds of new items and sets were added, and players could now become even more powerful than ever before. Horadric Cube gained ability to create new custom items, runes were added in a mind-numbing numbers, and boy oh boy, these were a game changer. They allowed for further bettering of gear, and when used in a correct combination, formed so-called rune wards, which provided even bigger bonuses than what they did on a face value. Charms found their way into the game as well, adding numerous different benefits. The gimmick was that you had to carry them in your inventory, so you always had to pick between having limited carrying capacity or a stat bonus before you went out adventuring to lay death with your sword, dagger, explosive fireball, or an army of skeletons. It was a balancing act, and one that added a lot to the potential character builds that were already overflowing the internet by then. If you think that's all, you're wrong, because Lord of Destruction kept on giving. Well, it should have kept on destroying given the name, but here you go, this one was an outlier. So there were also jewels, offering different bonuses. You could switch and carry 2 separate weapon sets, which some of the gamers used for that in particular, while others quickly realized that it was just a few extra slots of inventory and should be used as such for found items. The stash size has been doubled too, and video resolution of the game was bumped from 640 by 480 to new, sweet and showing a larger chunk of the maps 800 by 600. I often talk, well, not often, but whenever the subject resurfaces about how fun Diablo 2 was, and especially online. And it was, really, but only after getting this amazing expansion. Before it was a really decent follow-up to the first game, but not something that was to become as cult classic as the first title was. Well, as we know by today, Lord of Destruction made Diablo 2 even more beloved and remembered game than the original was. And the fact that the modding scene created like literally hundreds of total conversion mods for it, making it an infinitely replayable title, is just a cherry on this already way too sweet pie of a game. XCOM Enforcer is the last game released before the IP went into Firaxis's hands, and it's a third-person action shooter that I did not particularly like. Not because it was a terrible or downright broken game, mind you, but because whenever I thought about XCOM, I imagined these deep, hundreds of hours worth of global strategy and tactics games with role-playing elements and not a pew-pew-pew-pewer dressed in XCOM's clothing. So, keep watching, don't skip, as you may feel different about it. In XCOM Enforcer you play as a combat robot, which has to save hostages and kill aliens. And while there are different kinds of mission objectives in the game, either focusing on destroying transporter drones, surviving alien waves, protecting important facilities, or even facing alien bosses, all you really do in each of them is running around and pew-pewing hordes of enemies into non-existence and rescuing those who are unable to rescue themselves. It's not bad, but it's also not what I wanted from my XCOM. Each kill rewards so-called data points, which then can be picked up and used between missions to research new weapons and ammo. It's a fun idea and one that most fans of shooters will no doubt appreciate, as it offers a constant target to aim for, an incentive to play more if you will, but once again, it was not what I was looking for. The game is set during the events of the first Alien War depicted in the UFO Enemy Unknown. You're part of a secret military project that was supposed to be running in parallel to XCOM, but since funding was limited and the alien scourge repelling costed a lot of money, it was decided that all of it, every last penny, cent, gold tooth or a shiny marble, should go to XCOM, so your project was cancelled and you're the first and only robot left of it. As it will turn out, however, your role in winning the war will be crucial, as it will be you who will be responsible for destruction of the alien invasion mothership. That, however, is the very end of your gut-spilling and explosive adventure, which will take you throughout the large chunk of the United States before it even happens. If you like fast-paced third-person action shooters, or are prejudiced against otherworldly beings, or even enjoy shooting from weapons with self-explanatory names like the Nuker, you'll definitely like XCOM Enforcer. So, you should really ignore my complaints here, as there are many issues on my end. But if you spent hundreds if not thousands of hours in the original trilogy, then Enforcer will be rather disappointing. Red Faction is a sci-fi first-person shooter set on Mars in the late 21st century, and a game that became incredibly popular because of a single of its mechanics, but we'll get to that in a minute. Since Earth resources have been long depleted, humanity moved most of its mining operations to Mars. Sadly, along the way and over time, lost the humanity part of its name, and the miners are working in despicable conditions for very little money and have no health benefits. And when the mysterious plague starts taking its grim toll and killing hundreds of miners, the tensions between the hardworking men and the Ultor Corporation managing the operation are becoming more and more intense. And when one day, after being severely abused by the guard, an innocent and tired miner fights back and kills him in the process, the conflict between the working class and the corporation ignites with a red-hot flame, and the game begins. You play as Parker, a typical miner, who after witnessing this chain of unfortunate events decides to join the rebellion, so the titular Red faction. Your mission, which will slowly reveal itself as you go through the game, is ultimately to free the planet from under the oppressive corpo rule and bring freedom and justice to all the miners. Red Faction is heavily story-based and linear, taking you on this rollercoaster of action-packed adventure, scene by scene, especially that the aforementioned linearity is well hidden. And how, you may wonder? Well, I initially said that a single mechanic was what made Red Faction such a huge success, and that mechanic is rooted in its geomod engine that allowed for near-complete destruction of many objects and environments in the game. So, with use of explosives, heavy weapons or machinery, you can actually mold the environments or destroy buildings. Why would you do that? You may want to create a shortcut to a particular well-guarded location, or you may encounter a door that's impossible to open. So, why not go through the wall if possible? Red Faction's implementation of the mechanic was a monumental change to the other first-person shooters, which usually offered only a few small areas with destructible environments. And they were nearly always heavily scripted and incredibly limited. In Red Faction, if you give it a little thought and use your imagination, you could actually complete your objectives in many different ways, even how the devs never imagined them being possible. And all of that thanks to that single geomolding feature. Other than that, the game showers you with a whole plethora of various weapons, from riot shields and flamethrowers, through pistols and shotguns, all the way to rocket launchers, submachine guns, grenades, and many others. What's more, you also get to use jeeps, drillers, yes, like the one in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon, flying craft, and submarines. Red Faction perhaps is not the best FPS, nor it is the most groundbreaking one either, but it's one that felt so fresh, unique and captivating thanks to its mechanics and interesting plot that it was difficult to put away. So, if you enjoy games in a genre, definitely don't skip this one. 2001 was definitely an interesting year for PC. 3D was in a full swing, games were looking better and better, and new ideas and mechanics kept popping out, gluing us to our flickering screens. Was it the best year for Windows gaming though? I think that it's difficult to convincingly say so yet. We've barely seen 3 of these videos, well, I've made them so I may be a tiny bit ahead here, but I feel that it would be best to wait at least for a couple more episodes till you make up your mind. But if you happen to be sure of your answer already though, make sure to let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below, and maybe share it too, it helps more than you know. If you didn't, then don't naturally. It was fun talking to you as usual, and I'll see you, or more accurately, talk to you very soon.